start streaming.
Really
Can you try again?
I think so. Like,
Can
what is this? It's forbidden?
Can you refresh? Can you refresh?
Refresh, okay.
Would it appear?
I don't know. Let's see. Don't see anything yet.
Where does
Like
it
home
normally
menu.
show?
Videos, live, videos.
Live, I don't
Videos.
know. Do we sort by live? No.
You're streaming for
Live,
sure?
it is. It says
Oh, is
it says Tony Telemann from Pico.
Oh,
Aha,
You
it's
need
here.
You need to.
So later I
I
have to
see.
rename it. Yeah. Okay. Can you make it silent, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I can finally start. Okay. So what I want to share is how we are building web components with that in that dot project using pure vanilla JavaScript. So what is vanilla JavaScript? It's basically plain JavaScript without any additional libraries like jQuery and without any frameworks, like literally nothing. It's just using web JavaScript, what is it? Native web features. So it's lightweight, it's fast, it's easy to maintain, and it's reusable. So because we want to build many apps, we don't want to constantly rebuild all the components. And because we're not using React and all these libraries, we had to always rebuild stuff. So that's why we said, like, okay, let's now go and make a system. How exactly do we want to build components? And then let's build them, and then we can start reusing them. So our goal is to make some sort of a hypermodular structure. So many tiny components doing one thing, and then basically composing them together and reusing them in many projects. So this is like one example of one simple component, like input integer. So what we do first is we create a style sheet, and we have a default theme for that style sheet. So this is, for example, below you can see get theme function. This returns the default theme. And then we have a function input integer. And in here we create an element, div element, and attach shadow to it so that we can encapsulate that module so that when you use it in other components, you cannot overwrite the CSS, and you cannot have these clashing classes. So everything is like encapsulated inside of one module. And then, like, I don't know, we create the input, we set the input type to be a number, and then we set some event listeners on key up, on mouse leave, on blur, blah, blah. And then we append this input to the shadow. And then we add, as you can see, like a shadow adopted style sheets. We add the sheet, which is this default theme, and we add also a custom sheet. So every component can be themable, and when you require a component, you can pass in the options and basically set the custom theme that you want. And that's the whole logic. And every component looks like that. But now when we have this, we also want components to communicate with each other, because if we just have like these nicely encapsulated components, how do we make them communicate? Like I have an example of a range slider. And range slider, I can show it here. Range slider has two components, like input and the slider itself. And then when you slide here, you want to update this field. So you have to make these components talk to each other. And how do we do that? We basically, when we require a component, we pass in options. There, as I mentioned, is, for example, custom theme. But there's also a protocol. And when we call this protocol, so you can see protocol, we pass in some options, for example, who we are as a component, our name, and we add our callback function. We call it listen function, so that this parent component who uses us can notify us about certain things that we should do. And in our listen function, you can see in the body, when we receive a message, when some component calls our listen function, we get the type, and then we can check, oh, is this type maybe update? And if it is, then the value that is sent to us, we set our input value to that data. So, for example, again, back to this slider example, when slider changes, for example, it sends the information to the input field to also update by calling this listen function. So let's go back. So this is from the component perspective. This listen function, we call a protocol, we tell our name, and we give it a callback function so that this component can notify us. And from the parent component perspective, in the line 10, you can see how we basically call the input integer function. We give it this custom sheet and a protocol. But what is a protocol? Protocol is also a function where basically we receive a message that tells us who is this, when basically this subcomponent registers and tells us who it is. It gives us this from. And then we have like a state object, and we store for every subcomponent whatever we want. For example, we can store what is its value, and we store its notify function, the callback, to be able to notify it back. And we have our own listen function. So this is also what we give to the subcomponent, so that the subcomponent can also notify us back. So this is basically how we build the whole communication between components. And then we can just like have micro little components that can that we can orchestrate together, basically sending each other messages and then updating or doing whatever is necessary accordingly based on the message that they receive. Yeah, the example is basically this, what I already showed. For example, this slider, range slider integer component is composed of two subcomponents. Let's see. These subcomponents are range slider and input integer. It's hard to see here on the screen because it's very tiny. But yeah, it has two subcomponents. So, oops. The parent component is having two subcomponents. One is this slider and the other one is input integer. And whenever we change the value in, for example, this input, it sends the message to the parent, and then parent sends the message to the slider, hey, you should also update based on whatever is written inside of this input. And now, of course, this is now like a super simple example, but you can build all sorts of components. For example, also calendar. This is also one component that is consists of subcomponents such as button, for example. And I don't know, there's like 3 or 4 subcomponents here. And I made like also a little workshop series on YouTube. So the first one is about building this basic web component, just to make all these style sheets and to attach shadow DOM and to just make them work as independent. And then the next one is composing web components. So how do you add this communication layer and make components also communicate with each other? So yeah, that's basically it. If somebody wants to try these workshops out, they can just follow. It's like 20 lessons for each workshop. Each one is around 5 minutes. And if you want to ask some questions, there's other learners who already went through, and us helping out on our community Discord, which is, I don't know, lots of channels, but one of them is for helping people with this learning web components. So yeah, that's basically how we build our things in that dot. And if somebody has any questions regarding that, I'm happy to give more information. But that's basically what I wanted to share. Yeah. Any questions? I don't know. Do you want to say something?
I mean, I noticed that you quite often avoid working with any frameworks and large libraries to that. But would you say that like the consistency of the pattern that you're using here is basically a framework?
It is in a way, but like I think that in framework, it's really, you have to follow only this one path. Mm-hmm. There is no other way. Here is just like a best practice, how to say, like a suggestion, mm-hmm. But people can, of course, always adapt based on their needs. Do you want to add something? Because Alex basically architected this. You did. I mean, okay, together, but the main architect was definitely you. So, do you want to add something to it?
I don't know, what should I add? I mean, it's I like it because people can. I mean, either you have to be like a big company like Facebook or Google and make a framework, and then maybe you get lots of people to use it. But I think no matter what framework you use, if there is a vanilla JS component, you might always have support, even in your framework, to integrate with like some native web components. And now that it exists, it just makes things smaller and faster, and also it promotes learning like the basics, like the web APIs, which you might never need to touch if you use a framework that gives you like an alternative for everything that the native web APIs already give you in a way. Also, like, I don't know, over the like decades, there's so many frameworks that come and go. Who knows if React will be here forever? When React started, there were no template literals in JavaScript, so no way to do something like JSX. There were no web components and no shadow DOM, and now with all these new features, probably nobody would build React anymore the way it works if it was made today. But yeah, now you have so much code already, so it's, for now, it still stays. Facebook's still alive.
I mean, why I'm kind of happy to build things this way is like I started with Ruby on Rails, and I remember learning Ruby first, and then I had to learn like the whole framework Rails also on top. So I feel that if somebody is really like a complete beginner, it's so much easier to just start and learn one thing, and this is this.
I also, that gave me inspiration, what you just said, which is, if you do, let's say, AI with JavaScript, or you do visualization with JavaScript, or you do just building web apps, or whatever you do, there's a framework, and it's very likely that it will give you some sort of features that allow you to, like a loop, or define some reusable pieces, but every framework does it slightly differently, so you have to always customly learn all these custom things for that framework to do this stuff, even though there's almost always an equivalent in vanilla.js. And if they would all use vanilla.js, you can reuse much more of your knowledge instead of always learning like a slightly different way of doing things and then remembering all of those.
Yeah, plus what I feel like is, I feel more empowered because it feels that like every part of this component I kind of understand, while when I was using Ruby on Rails, there was so much magic that just happened and it just worked, but I didn't understand. So if something broke, I had harder time to debug and figure out what is wrong. Any other questions or thoughts? Then we can finish this one and soon do the next talk, I guess. Cool. Yeah, Jonathan, do you have any sketch that you want to share?
I'm working on it.
So not yet ready?
Right, so we have to make
Okay.
more questions.
Oh shit, yeah. I don't know what else is here to be added. I mean, we definitely want to make like a, yeah, we have some little budget to bounty people who would like to help us build the components. Of course, everything is open source and can be reused by anyone, and that's the goal. That's why also we have this theming option, so that the whole logic is written and you can just like add your own custom CSS and make things look like completely in your theme. So then basically many projects can join forces and build these components together. So if anyone like are learners who go through these workshops, they can ping us, and if they want to build something, they can yeah, also get some little bounty. And Alex, you are completely invisible in the camera. I see that you're just a...
Did you see his hand?
No, you're just like hiding behind his...
Hey. No, what I just remembered is that we do have the same style of communicating also across microservices, or even in the backend or anywhere. We use the similar techniques with all these messages, and they always have the same format, and we can define protocols, and we can store them very easily on append-only logs and replicate them to other machines. So that's also nice, because a lot of frameworks or whatever, they use some sort of state management libraries where they accumulate all that state, and then you can maybe make a snapshot and save it, but we just basically have those messages and you can replay them, and they lend themselves very nicely to just append them to append-only logs, and that's so easy to replicate. And because the goal is to build peer-to-peer apps, it kind of works well with that. So maybe that's another thing.
Yeah, also these workshops are using this listen and notify callbacks that we define directly in the components themselves. But because this is like repeating each time, we also have like a helper function for that, like a protocol maker. So there is like kind of more details, and for like more complex components, we are basically using this kind of helper function. So this is also something I can share if somebody would be interested. Yeah. Okay. So should we wrap it up?
Hey, you don't share this. You don't share it now?
What?
I need 1 second.
Yeah, Jonathan. So Nora, then you can say you are a React developer. How similar or far is it from the way you do stuff? And is this something that you could find useful for building yourself? Or is it nice that everything just comes out of the box in React and you don't have to think about anything? And build all these components yourself because they just exist already and you can reuse them, I guess?
It's pretty similar for the callback and the structure that you arrange for the components. And so, but we still have to build the components ourselves. But the good thing is it has really big company. So for like sliders or calendars, maybe we can find a lot of libraries that are already built. And we can, if we want to some customization, we can just fork the library and then do it ourselves. So yeah, I think I can see why, because like for what Alex just said, maybe it's going to be disappeared in the future. So, so the good part is if we really understand the native JavaScript, we can always build our own version library. But as a React developer, I mean, the convenient part is that we can put up things together really quickly because we have so many resources that we can use. Yeah.
What about the theming? How is theming working in React?
Yeah. It's built in the framework library as well. We can just do some config like that. But yeah, we don't have to do everything from scratch. So I think that's also the good part of it.
Yeah. I think it's just like sometimes if you have like a smaller project, like to require this whole massive React thing, just to have like a simple form with, I don't know, a couple of input fields is like a question. Do you have like a React Lite version or something?
I think React itself is pretty light.
He's not, no. Maybe, yeah, maybe we can call him and...
Well, I'll call him then because I mean, I'm staying here tonight, so it's fine. I'm a bit late. Doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Okay, we were just like kind of live streaming something, so...
Oh,
that,
really? Okay.
Yeah, but otherwise we will be able to...
Okay, don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Sorry.
Just that you know that
Join
we are
us.
otherwise very kind and...
Okay, cool.
No, because like nobody's standing up and like, oh, how can you have we're in the middle of the...
Gotta explain.
Because otherwise it's like, what is happening here? Yeah.
This is cool. This is cool.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And Tony, you said that you tried Tonic, which is quite similar.
Yeah, I'm not visible on the camera right now. I don't know why. Wait, it's okay. Problem solved. Let's see, am I visible now? Yeah, look, I'm shuffling right in. Nice. Okay. So yeah, for latest project we actually we did we've done Vue, and then we've worked with Svelte for a couple of years. And now for latest project we want to try well, going as vanilla as possible, just real regular vanilla components, and Tonic. It was Tonic. We accidentally just picked that. What can I say? I realize now that when you go with the vanilla approach, the browser's technology has really gone forward. Like there is so much new functionality there that wasn't there a couple of years ago. Like basically, you don't really need React anymore in a couple more years. I think it's just gonna be disappearing. So this is not really a talk about Tonic. I'm still trying to become friends with it. It's a little harsh. Sometimes yeah, I don't know. The Tonic guys think there's a lot of security stuff in there. Not sure why, but what I think is that your approach here is actually a little bit cleaner in a sense. That it's more true to real vanilla. I mean, it's basically the art of using what you have and trying to not include and depend on other pieces. I haven't tried your framework yet, so I can't really give you a good like comparison. Sorry. Approach your philosophy. But I mean, it's really close to what I'm working with right now. So free thumbs up.
Cool. Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I didn't even show like package.json. They literally like what we're using is Budo and Browserify. So Budo is helping us for local development to have like a live reload and to create bundle locally. but Browserify just kind of creates bundle for the for production, and that's it.
Oh yeah, you can be bundleless as well, more or less, right?
Could we be bundleless?
Buildless.
Of course, I mean, like we only. I mean, if you don't we don't npm install anything, it's just vanilla.js, so you don't need a bundler. But of course, if you install other modules, like let's say another component, then of course, then you need a bundler because yeah. But the thing is, now I mean, it's still like kind of still early, I feel, but in theory, now that the browsers have import, like native import, you could use that instead, but there's still some sort of caveats that make it not straightforward. Because when you specify like a name, like a module name, that's not what the native mechanisms understand. You have to still translate that, so you usually still use a bundler. But it's possible to do it without, and I think that's also what we're aiming for, to in the future transition away from bundlers, especially when we start building apps for Hyper. But I think that needs a few more months.
Yeah, so the way we created these tutorials to kind of get started with web components, the goal is to then start to then make more tutorials to help people build like really peer-to-peer apps from scratch. So building hypercore based apps, maybe Substrate, and we will document this and make like short, simple tutorials so that somebody can get from 0 to hero.
Yeah, so literally Hyper doesn't work in the browser, but so you need to have some sort of a local installation of something that gives you access to Hyper in the browser, or you install a different browser that supports Hyper natively, and there are browsers like Aggregor, maybe Beaker, and maybe some others in the future. But once you have native access to Hyper, then you could literally use the native import in browsers to get whatever module you need. And otherwise, you just build web components with vanilla.js, so no need for bundlers anymore. So we'll get rid of all bundlers, and there's no need for that anymore. And yeah, in a few months, I hope we're there. We will be there.
Yeah. Jonathan, how is it going?
Good. I just did this quick sketch of the area.
Ooh. Oh, this is now us here.
Above your head.
That's cool. Oh, and my head with the hat.
Yeah.
Can we share it?
So cool.
Sure.
This is amazing. Wait, let's see if I can bring it closer to the camera. Let's see.
Waiting until we see what other people are seeing.
Yeah, it takes time. Let's see if I go closer. So it's basically meta. This is literally, I'm showing this now to this little phone standing there on this picture that I'm showing. So it's like, so it's super meta. And it's me with the hat. Cool. Thank you, Jonathan. This is awesome. Cool. Thank you, everyone, for watching this, and thanks for nice chat, everyone here. So we continue soon with another stream.